Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here and welcome to another interactive conversation of our Elevate Women series, where we speak to women leaders and field experts to learn from their valuable experiences. My name is Anna, and I'm with the Amplify team here at empathy.co. With me today is Leoni Janssen, founder and lead strategist of the BAS company. She's going to talk to us about her career, building communities and movements while sharing her knowledge and experience. Leoni, it's amazing to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you in this world?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you for having me. So as you said, I founded the BAS company. BAS stands for Branding as a Service, which is a massive wink to SaaS, obviously. We work for SaaS companies, B2B technology. I have grown up really in corporate comms and branding. I've been doing branding and positioning for technology companies since 1998. Introducing e-commerce when it wasn't a thing, introducing LinkedIn when socials wasn't a thing. So I really like to introduce new things to the world. Hence, we said, maybe we should talk about movements. Like, how do you do that? Yeah, another topic that intrigues me highly is talent, and why I think the term is overused and overrated, which is a dangerous thing to say, maybe, but yeah, I'm building a company. I have been close to the MAC Alliance since inception of it, positioning it as the new big movement, big new trend in modern technology, and that's what I like to do most.
You've done a lot of things. You've been everywhere. I love how groundbreaking that's everything that you're mentioning. What are 3 words that you would use to define yourself?
3 words. Well, I don't really know 3 words. Maybe, well, to define myself, like what I'm a big picture thinker. I can only understand details when I see the big picture. So big picture thinker. A lot of grit, kind of carrying through. So grit, I would say, is a word. And then creative in terms of strategizing, coming up with new solutions to get to the big picture. I think those 3 would best describe me professionally, but yeah.
Awesome. Well, I mean, creative, you have to be completely if you start your own company and build communities and shape initiatives like what you've been doing with the Women in Mac. So definitely, I think creative is a great fit. How would you say that your professional experience defined you as a person and as the professional that you are today?
Right. Well, there's so many different ways to answer that question, and allow me to elaborate a little bit. So when I just said I think talent is overrated, is that I think I have developed a lot of skills over the time that I have no talent for. So I think by now, when we use the word talent for everything, we are underrating skills and we are underrating craftsmanship. And I think I have learned so many things from mentors and teachers and people that have worked with me over the years that I would not have learned on my own. So that is really kind of the professional that I am today. Is a little bit of talent, not so much. I think a lot of learning, a lot of doing things, making mistakes, consciously filling up the talent gaps that you have. By nature, I'm an awful planner. The creative head, I have 25 ideas per second. But I've learned to plan massive projects. That is not talent. That's just, doing stuff that you hate to do, but you have to do anyway, to kind of, do the stuff that you want to do. And also my biggest pet peeve with the word talent is that it's kind of used, I think it's belittling even to use that word so much, because we're not valuing the stuff that people have learned as much. And it's also, it's only mentioning a little part of someone. And it's actually the part that you haven't worked for. It's kind of the privilege that you've gotten at birth. But there's so much more to people. It's where they put, where they put their energy, where does their drive come from? All those things, I think, need a bigger shout out these days in the world of talent.
Yeah, I love how you say this part when you're talking about, we have a saying that we use constantly in the Amplify team, well, in empathy in general, that we say learning by doing. And
right.
It's exactly that. It's, being able to take your efforts and take the things that you were born with and your natural instincts and enhancing them with your surroundings and your skills, and just being able to grow from what you already have. But I love how you say that talent is just something that we just have it. It's not something that it gains an effort or requires any sort of effort from our end as human beings. And it's great.
No, it's good to know it. It's good to know your talents. It's also really good to know your talent gaps. And often people that consciously learn to fill in the talent gaps, they can teach those. It's much easier to teach things to others that you struggled with to learn yourself than if it comes naturally to you, because you cannot explain what you didn't put effort in yourself. So sometimes the better teachers are not the gifted ones.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And with this in mind, I would like to talk about the challenges that you've been involved with in your past. Like, how did you ever find yourself in a situation where you thought, wow, this is going to take a lot. I'm going to have to do a lot of work to overcome this situation or these situations?
Oh, so many. Well, let me start with the one very early on in my career. I was with Edelman at the time, and I had an amazing teacher who was also my boss, and but she was teaching me actively, which I thought was great. And I think I was there only for 2 months, and she said, well, we really appreciate your work and you're super smart, but you're too slow. I was like, oh my God, how do I change that? Because I identified with my own pace. Like, that's just how I did things. And I just started experimenting with okay, let's imagine the time I take to do stuff. And I would give that a 5. So typically I spend a 5 on doing something. See what happens if I make that a 4.5. Is it still good enough? See what happens if I make that a 3. Are things breaking? So kind of allowing myself to experiment with that, and then kind of finding a comfortable new you there. So that's I think an example from very early on. Other examples where I didn't really know how to solve it. Well, many experiences, and actually often I just go to someone and say, I don't know how to solve this. Any ideas, any thoughts? Testing your own thoughts with someone you trust. Could be anyone, really. Could be your dad, could be a colleague that you appreciate, could be a friend or a partner. Test your thoughts, speak up, really, because as long as thoughts are in your head, you're not testing them, because you will never find a proof in your head whether they validate or not. It's not in there. You have to take them outside. So yeah.
So it's kind of like stepping out of your comfort zone to find new comfort in yourself. You have to break those barriers that you set to yourself and find new ways to improve and to grow. That's amazing. I've never looked at it in that way. Like to find comfort, you have to break your current comfort, but it's very true. It's very much realistic.
Yeah, and actually, often you don't find comfort to begin with. But for example, when I started the Bass company, I had this idea in my head that I wanted to create a service for companies that are looking at massive milestones in their hyper growth situation. Could be a massive transformation because they have a new investor, could be we're going to the stock exchange market in 2 years or next year, and we need to prepare better. Massive milestones that this company hasn't done before. I have a lot of experience. I work with people that have done all these things before, so I thought I can come in as a CMO on demand, take the team under my arm, and kind of just do this. I was afraid to pitch this idea to people because maybe it wasn't good. So the first person I told this to was Sonia Carroll, who then later founded the Mock Alliance. And she came back to me a few months later saying, I have an idea that I think would be perfect fitting with your idea of building this company. So actually sharing it with someone creates also the opportunity that you need so that you can actually start doing it.
Yeah.
No one will find you if no one knows. Right?
Exactly. And it's also nice to be able to say things out loud in a way, you know, you have these great ideas in your mind and sometimes you say them aloud and you're like, wait, maybe it's not so great, or maybe completely the opposite. You say it out loud and you're like, wait, this is much better than what I pictured. I think I'm going to roll with this.
Yes.
So it's the finding your comfort and finding your people to be able to trust and to communicate and to find support, which works in almost, well, I would say every aspect of life, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Oh, I just want to take a quick moment to remind our guests, everyone here, that we have time for a Q&A round at the end. So if anybody has any questions they want to send Leoni, send them to the Q&A chat and we'll be answering them.
Yeah, and I would be super happy, actually. I think that kind of creates the vibe that I like the conversational, this is what people are thinking about, and kind of how can I share what I've learned. So happy.
Yes, amazing. I want to ask you about life-work balance. How do you create balance in your everyday life with so many projects going around and so many things happening every day?
Right. Yeah, I thought about that, and I would say I work a lot because also I really like what I do. But I also I'm very flexible, making my own, deciding on my own schedule. So probably I just pack my private life quite full, just to make sure that I have to take the time to actually log off as well. So I have a family, I have a horse, I have pets, I go to the gym 3 times a week, I run, just to make sure that I'm not a still sitter. I cannot just sit and do nothing. So I have to give myself something to do, which actually is quite relaxing. So for example, when I'm with my horse at the stables, it's a responsibility, and but it's entirely different energy, and creates such a different vibe for me. So that's, I think, how I do it. And it's very different for everyone. I have that, and it's just really.
I find it interesting how you schedule yourself, your leisure time and your out of work opportunities and situations, so that it's very easy to get lost in work, especially now with working from home and all of the situation. It's not as easy as getting up and leaving home, but you have to shut down mentally and emotionally from your work and, move out of the room. So I love how you're doing that. You're scheduling and making time for yourself ahead of time. So you know that you have to be gone by a certain time or be doing something that is going to be better for your health and, for your environment entirely.
Yeah, and I have to do that. Otherwise, I'm just, and also I try to do stuff in the morning. So I work out before I start to work in the morning, because when I'm concentrated on what I'm on my projects, then it's very hard for me to get out. So I know that by now, and I plan it that way.
Amazing. And okay, awesome. I have another question that I wanted to ask you was like, what with the Mac Alliance and everything that you've done, empathy, just recently signing the Mac Manifesto, which is a very interesting thing because, it's all about this whole supporting women in the workplace and being able to help women out in not just, saying that we are helping women, but representing and showing representation in the workplace. How do you fit into all of this with the Mac Alliance? What is your role with this? I would love to know more about this.
Yeah, so the topic has been on my radar for long. I've been in the technology industry for almost 25 years, and I have often been the only woman in the room. So I know the feeling. So it's been on my radar for years. Also, I have struggled with the idea, like, do we need rules? Is this solving itself over time, or do we need quota? Am I for quota or against quota? I've kind of had these discussions with myself, but also with many people. And there's just one anecdote that I'd like to share that kind of made me believe in quota. And that is, that has to do with reverse parking. I'm quite good at reverse parking. So I often have gotten applause from people in the streets when they see me reverse park. And it's funny in a way, like, right? So you get out of your car and you've got people applauding for reverse parking. But it's also a bit crazy because I have checked with other people, especially men, if they ever get praise for reverse parking. And no man has ever gotten applause for reverse parking. And it's not because I'm such a great parker, it's just because the expectation of women is low.
Yeah.
I'm just a normal parker. But because people don't expect that, I get a silly amount of praise for it. And I think that's the reason why we need quota, and because we do need to encourage representation much more to break this crazy cycle of low expectations. So I'm passionate about the topic. So when Marcus with Mindcurve brought up, like, should we do an event around this? Should we do a manifesto? I have to admit, I was hesitant to think we could pull it off, but he was quite persistent. So I kind of started thinking on how can we do this? How can we co-write a manifesto with 100 people? I had never done it before. I don't think a lot of people have ever done that before. But we pulled it off, and we pulled it off in a few hours only. In Madrid, we workshopped it, and a lot the different groups had different subtasks for the manifesto, and there was one online document that everyone inputted to. Then we did one big edit, and then it was there. So that was, and I think it's amazing, and I think it's amazing that empathy really gets it in terms of, it should not feel like this is extra work, because no one has time for extra work. It's a mindset. It's kind of the way you approach the already existing work. And then all of a sudden you can take on 17 action items where a lot of other companies struggle to even pick 5. So I think that's, hats off, really good.
Yes, it was great news to hear from our end, to know that, it was, because it's what the first question I asked you, well, the second question I asked you was 3 words that define you. And it's one of the hardest questions that anyone ever has to answer in any circumstance, because describing yourself and putting yourself out there in that way, just like choosing what points you're going to work with, or when there's so many options and there's so many possibilities, it's difficult to choose the right one. And knowing that not only we didn't struggle to choose 5, but we went above and beyond, and we're like, okay, let's go for 12 more. You know, it really makes the way of how we can support representation. I think we can support people all around, because it's not, I mean, of course, women are the center of this, but it's not only women that need representation nowadays. So,
absolutely. It's also really about underrepresented groups, and everything that is good for women is also good for other underrepresented groups. And I think we need to be super aware of that. So yes, this started around gender, but it's not just that. It's about a mindset of wanting to create a level playing field.
Amazing. I love it. What would you leave as your final advice for the audience? What would be your final piece of advice for the viewers?
Oh, what would be my final bit of advice? Well, you know, when investing in your career, it's really good to know yourself, to know what to build on, to know what talent gaps to fill up, to also to know who to seek out as your mentors, as your teachers, as your allies. The seeking out bit, I think, is an important one. If you don't feel the power to change stuff that you want to change yourself, think about who can help you. And just have that one-on-one conversation. Hardly anyone will tell you no. Just do it. Talk to other people. I think that's, again, kind of closes the loop. If you have an idea, make sure at least one good person that you know and trust, you tell this to, brainstorm, and get moving.
Amazing. Well, we have a question from Angel, our CEO. How would you motivate young women to embark on the digital industry? Sometimes I wonder if our industry is unattractive for talented young women, particularly in the B2B space. And yet there's so much exciting things to do. There are, but is this boring appearance perhaps? Like, is this something that might appear as boring for young women? What do you say?
I'm afraid I don't have the answer. You know, but representation matters. So coming into a company that is mostly men is quite off-putting for young women. I remember my first mentor, she was a lady who led, you know, in a tech practice. I felt quite at home with her. Would I have had the same experience if that had been a man? I don't know, but I think for me it was really good that she was a woman. It was easier for me to identify with. I think women hire women more easily. So putting women in charge of hiring women is a really good step, because they don't see a lot of the objections that unconsciously men have. What we've also learned is that unconsciously, we're all, women and men, we're all used to how men typically promote themselves, and also in job interviews. I've heard a lot of people say that they were so used to a lot of hot air and blah, blah, where women will probably in the first instance tell you about their doubts, not being sure if they can actually do the job, which is not disqualifying them. It's just a different way of talking about it. So if we're just aware that because they have doubts, they're not disqualifying themselves, we also create better opportunities, I think.
I completely agree. It's also about being able to see yourself. Nowadays, you see more young girls learning about technology and learning about programming, and there's so many new academies that are coming up, and there's new ways. So I think it's just a matter of making sure that this new generation of young women and young girls have the visual and can see themselves represented in the places where they would like to work, whether it be technology or B2B or marketing or anything else, really, because it's not the same as not being able to see yourself.
Absolutely. And also one thing to really keep in mind, women don't usually say, I can do this. So if you see something as a manager, as a leader, if you see something in a woman in your company, tell her, I see this in you. Support this one person. And I think that's one of the action items as well with the manifesto for a CEO, to just kind of pick one or two really talented people that you see and kind of help them surface, because they might not say, I need that promotion. I deserved it.
Yeah, amazing. We have another question coming in. What do you do when you feel like you're not being taken seriously? How do you handle it? And what tips would you give to change this? This is a really good question.
Yes, it depends on the situation. Sometimes you can find it in yourselves to regroup and go back in and see if you can explain yourself better. We also know that women until they're about 50 years old are just seen as less strategic than men, so it can be hard. So finding allies can be a really good one. So if you feel that you're not being taken seriously, but you can read the room and you know who in that room is being taken very seriously, I would even recommend create a personal bond with that person and ask that person to support you in the next meeting. No one will say no to that, but it's not often done, right? So if I'm in a meeting and someone calls me afterwards and say, I can see that this just happened and I was not taken seriously, and I think you got my point, is that correct? Could you next time back me up? That will change the whole scene. You know, there are formal leaders and there are informal leaders. Work with the informal leaders and the formal ones as well, but you can learn to be a little bit tactical and kind of build your own profile. Because if informal leaders publicly support you, you will just kind of be seen more, and it's stuff that you just have to try out. It feels a bit counterintuitive and scary to do, but usually you will like these people.
Yeah, and usually it's people that you at least are familiar with, in a sense. If you're holding meetings with these people and you manage to read the room and get a sense of it, it's usually going to be either a coworker or, you know, a partner in work that's going to help you out. So that's a great tip. Actually, I'm going to use that for myself as well. And on a similar note, we have another question. What insights do you have on fighting imposter syndrome, which is a really great one, whether when interviewing or already in a role you love, which is also very common?
Yes. Yeah, I have a very big imposter in me. I just remember every time I got a letter from university, every time I opened the envelope, I felt they were going to send me away, but I did nothing wrong. But, you know, kind of that's how ingrained it is. I think telling yourself the opposite, you kind of have to coach yourself a little bit, because that voice is talking to you all the time and you do not control it. What you should be doing is find people around you that actually counter that voice. And you also have to do it yourself. So actively know what that horrible voice is telling you all the time, and then take 10, 15 minutes a day to tell it's not true. Even just going for a walk, talk out loud and tell you the opposite story. Tell yourself the opposite story with examples, because you have them. It's an active thing to do. It doesn't just go away. And then I have to say it's better now. As you grow older and have achieved stuff, you start to trust yourself more. But help yourself while you're doing that.
Yes, I was recently reading an article that said, if your thoughts start with what if, ignore it. It's not going to do you any benefits. It's not going to help you, you know, improve yourself. It's just going to be an intrusive thought that's going to get in your way and just kind of be an obstacle for yourself. Right. So yeah, for sure. And imposter syndrome is there, it's real, we can't help it, but it's a matter of working around it and figuring out that well, not figuring out, but learning that you are capable and learning that it's just your brain playing tricks on you.
Yes, no, absolutely. Also, sometimes it helps to find out what part of you is doing this. Does it have to do with something that happened before? Was there an awful teacher that made you feel you couldn't do stuff? Because just in investigating a bit of that example can, while you now look at it being an adult, can make you laugh about it as well and kind of get more real about it.
I could not agree more. I was just reading, not a question, but Erika from Empathy, she had the chance to meet you in person during the Woman in Mac event you had in September. And your power and wisdom that you transmit, which is evident here, I feel it. You are pure inspiration, and I could not agree more with what she's saying. This has been amazing. And I want to close off with one last question from you, really easy one. What book would you recommend to the viewers? What would you think is your top book of 2022, maybe, that you could help everyone here?
Can I mention two? So
yes,
the really serious one is Principles by Ray Dalio. And a really fun one that has just recently started inspiring me is Fac Perfection. And I love the title, Fac Perfection.
I love it.
Right? You know, because it's really about all this. And the main message in that book is your work is a gift. And it's not something you have to do. It's something that you should be enjoying to do. And it doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to be something that you love putting out in the world.
Perfect. And we have one more question coming in. This has been great. A recently released Forbes article shows that women ask for 20% less salary in tech jobs than men, which is a fact that we've all unfortunately are too familiar with. But do you think this is because we as women question our worth? Apparently, this percentage disappears completely when women are aware of what others are getting paid. Do you think transparency could be important to close the gender pay gap?
I think so. I also think it's really hard for companies, and then I'm talking as an employer as well. It's really hard for companies, and it's also really hard to do that in a global company because there are obviously geographical differences as well. Transparency is good, but also it's also really good to just for individuals to have that conversation with yourself. It's close to the imposter syndrome. When I was at my first job, I was a billable consultant. A lot of people struggled with writing their time because you felt like, but now we're billing the customer and you would feel bad for that. So we developed this training that was called You're Fucking Worth It. And that's my advice. You're fucking worth it. Start to believe it and just ask for it. And because in that conversation, you will learn you're worth it.
Beautiful. Couldn't have said it any better. Well, Leoni, it has been great talking to you, and I hope everyone here has enjoyed hearing from you and being part of this as much as I did. I want to thank you so much for coming and talking to us, and I also want to thank everyone who came and joined the conversation. If anybody is looking to reach out to you, your profile is linked on our Elevate Women website, and we'll also be sharing this recording shortly on social media for everyone to be able to rewatch and share. Thank you so much, Leoni.
Thank you. It was my pleasure entirely. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Everyone have a great day. Bye-bye.